Hey guys, how's it going? It's Clarice here with That Done Movie Show, and it's one small video for me, one giant pain in the ass for my editing software. Yes, let's do this. It's time for First Man, the new film from Damien Chazelle, who, as a diehard musical fan, I am forever thankful to, of course, for La La Land, but sadly First Man is not a musical. There's no "we've gotta go to the moon." This is a drama, and yes, it tracks Neil Armstrong's journey to becoming the first man to walk on the moon. Which, I'll be totally honest, the epic space mission movie isn't exactly novel, and it's not a particularly exciting way to structure a movie, you know, where they try to go to space, and then they fail a couple of times, and then they do eventually go to space. But then again, it's Damien Chazelle, and I think he's such an inventive filmmaker that he's not gonna do a shiny biopic without good reason. And what's interesting is that for most of this film, I was impressed, I was invested, but I wasn't quite wowed. That is, until Neil Armstrong put his goddamn foot on the moon, and then suddenly I was crying. I wasn't really quite sure why. I mean, I'd never cried about the moon landing before, but there was something about the tone of it and the way it was paced and the thematic arcs that just, it was all coming together to this one moment, and then bang, in a single shot, I got it. I understood, and I think that is pretty impressive. And you know, I just came away from First Man feeling very reflective about where we are in cinema at the moment, because think back to the 90s, Apollo 13, that kind of film. If First Man had been made then, it would have been a completely different beast. It would have been heroic and like, oh my god, what an incredible achievement for mankind! Good job, mankind! And instead, we get this movie, which is much more intimate and much more reflective. It's just a deeper, more meaningful analysis of what heroism is. Neil Armstrong isn't presented as this kind of Buzz Lightyear figure. I know that's Buzz Aldrin, but meh. But he's completely emotionally cut off from the world. He can't even sit his kids down to tell them that he's going to space and may never come back. And Ryan Gosling has always had a talent for the internalization of emotion, so he's pretty perfect for this. He can do his little fist clench. You know, he goes like this, he clenches his fists and then he just like squeezes them a little bit. But that internalization of emotion is basically Neil Armstrong's coping method, and that's how he's able to get the job done. Because it wasn't just about landing on the moon, it was about landing on the moon after so much risk and so much failure and so much death, because this film doesn't hold back from the fact that people died during the space race. And so he had to shield himself from it in a way, even if that meant damaging his relationship with his family. Which is where Claire Foy comes in, playing Janet, Neil Armstrong's wife, and the role of the astronaut's wife is a pretty thankless one, but I think Damien Chazelle puts more emphasis than you would expect on Neil Armstrong's home life and really examines how the world around him shaped him and in turn how he shaped the world around him. So Janet is this woman who's seen her husband put up all these walls around him, and then she has to come at those walls with an emotional sledgehammer, and those scenes between them are a nice break from the admittedly not super absorbing conference room scenes where they talk a lot about how to get to the moon and then what happens once they're on the moon. And also, it's a portrait of heroism that is thoughtfully and consciously complicated, because huge amounts of money were poured into this and lives were lost to essentially beat the Russians at something. And so there were people who arguably had real concerns and said, is this really worth it? We hear lines from Jill Scott Heron's poem Whitey's on the Moon, which is a rage against the money being poured into man's curiosity, while there were people dying on the streets of America. And I think it's important to acknowledge these criticisms when we tell the story of the space race, and I think it's significant that Damien Chazelle included them, but I don't think it makes Neil Armstrong any less of a hero for what he did. It just acknowledges that heroism isn't always totally straightforward. It's like that JFK speech that we hear in this movie, you know, we chose to go to the moon in this decade and do other things not because they are easy, but because they are hard. And I'm sorry for leaving this until last, because this is probably all you guys were waiting for, but yes, the cinematography, the space scenes. So this was shot on 35mm with IMAX cameras, and I saw it in the IMAX, and I would say you do lose a little bit of the intimacy with the family scenes, but with the space scenes, it's breathtaking, it's incredible. You do truly feel like a minuscule speck of dust in the face of all that. And also the use of silence here. I mean, Justin Hurwitz wrote a very nice epic space movie score, but at key moments it'll just completely cut out the sound. It'll go completely silent, and that is so effective. And also what Damien Chazelle did here is really focus on the personal experience of space travel, of what it's like to be in essentially a tiny tin can hurtling into the void, being like shaking about like someone is trying to make a cocktail out of you. And it is intense. It's really intense, especially watching it in IMAX. It was almost a bit too much for my anxious little self. But I think it's all those things together that made me cry. How overwhelming the actual sensory experience of it was, how moving its exploration of heroism was. It made me cry. I cried about the moon landing, of all the things to cry about in 2018. But if you've had a chance to see First Man, I would love to know what you guys thought. You can let me know down in the comments below, or you can hit me up on Twitter, details down in that description box. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe so we can hang out and talk about movies. I'll see you guys soon. Bye!